Fintech specialist Mode Global has big plans to move beyond its opening promise of bringing digital assets to everyone by building what it says will be a new payment system and the potential for open banking. Let's find out now more about what's going on at Mode Global with the team there. And I'm pleased to be able to introduce three members of the senior team at Mode Global, starting first of all on my immediate left with Jonathan Rowland, the Executive Chairman. We've also got Chief Operating Officer Rita with us and Chief Product Officer Janis Legler. Jonathan, I want to start with you if we can. We spoke a couple of months ago about Mode and what we're doing. Just quickly reappraise what the company is trying to achieve here as we go into 2021.
Thanks, Jeremy, and good morning again. It's been a couple of months since we last spoke, and a lot's happened in our industry. So we set a company up a couple of years ago, as you may remember, called Mode, which floated on the stock market in October of last year. And we have two sort of strings to our bow. We have a very simple, easy to use banking wallet, which you can manage your Bitcoin, your sterling, and your euros in. And that has been well received by the market since we launched it last year. And with the appreciation of Bitcoin, we've seen our user numbers grow hugely. So a very active wallet at the moment, which enables people to buy Bitcoin in a very simple, easy to do fashion. And Janis will tell you a bit about that later. On the other side, we have a payments business. And initially, the payments business was a partnership with Alipay and WeChat Pay, the two big Chinese companies. And we've now developed our own new novel payment system, which is called Mode for Business, which will be launched very soon.
What do you attribute that increase in user numbers to?
Well, it's brand awareness, people starting to understand what Mode is and how easy it is to use. But also with Bitcoin taking off from, I think when we last spoke, Jeremy, it was something like $10,000. It's risen to close to 40,000. It's pulled back a bit recently. But we've seen a huge uptake from a new audience of people buying Bitcoin. So whereas before it was the specialists, the people who are interested in cryptocurrencies and new technologies and new financial ways to do things, we're now seeing institutions come into the market, large institutions like Square in America, MicroStrategy, PayPal's big announcement last year. But more importantly, we've seen a huge audience from the retail side. And we're seeing people asking questions about how you buy Bitcoin, what is it, what does it mean? So there's been a huge take up from a new audience of people, which is related to the appreciation of the price of Bitcoin, but also the media have now made it mainstream, focusing a lot of articles regarding finance.
Yeah, let's pick up this point, if I can, with your colleague Janis Legler on this, because Janis, I know that you specialize in this particular area. Let's talk a little bit more about this price of Bitcoin. What's happened? Jonathan just outlined the move up that we've seen. We have subsequently seen a big pullback as well, proportionately. What is your view on Bitcoin, the assets, and the future for this, and where the price is likely to go?
Yeah, good morning, Jeremy. So in 2020, we just saw a couple of significant macro events come together, and they have accelerated the adoption of Bitcoin in the same way they have accelerated the adoption of video conferencing or e-commerce in the same time. And with the economic crisis around COVID, we've seen unprecedented printing of money in the trillions, actually, by central banks all over the world, and there's no end in sight. So just to put things to perspective, 25% of all US dollars in existence have been printed last year. So all sorts of investors were then kind of looking for ways to escape the inflation, and were looking for stores of value, and that's why you saw all sorts of assets rising, from technology stocks to gold. But most importantly, I think the narrative of Bitcoin as digital gold, that has really played out perfectly in that time, because Bitcoin has a supply that is limited by an algorithm in the open source code. So in fact the newly issued Bitcoin last year has been reduced with the halving, which occurs every 4 years. And after this, you've always historically seen a bull run in the price afterwards. So then you have the major institutions and the hedge funds and the likes of Grayscale and PayPal and Square. They're buying up more than the weekly issued supply each week. And this is how you arrive at these prices. But quite frankly, even if you see a slight correction in the short term, like we've seen yesterday, for example, the macro story around Bitcoin is not changing, and I believe we can still see new highs between 100 and 200,000 US dollars in this year or the year after. So savers around the world, they're mainly looking for stores of value rather than speculative assets. And if you look at the market caps of Bitcoin around 500 billion and compare it to, for example, gold's market cap of 10 trillion, then you can still expect price rises from at least 10x if Bitcoin outperforms gold. And if you look at other asset classes, which are historically been used as stores of value, like treasuries and bonds, they have negative real yields. And if Bitcoin only captures 1% of the trillions in value stored in these assets overall, we can still see the market cap growing several orders of magnitude. So from an investor's perspective, I think it has been massively de-risked, and there's a lot of upside. And this is why Bitcoin has a very good risk-reward ratio among all asset classes.
But of course, it must be pointed out that as indeed you mentioned, we've seen this big rise up this year. We've seen a relatively big pullback, as I said. So it is a highly volatile market. Just quickly outline the various ways that one can get exposure to the crypto space, because I mean, this is a fast evolving area, isn't it? What do you say to people that say, look, what's available to us?
So, as Jonathan has mentioned, in the beginning of this bull cycle, it has been institutions and high net worths and family offices and also corporates like Moat and other ones in the US, for example, that have been getting exposure to Bitcoin, that have been buying directly or Bitcoin-related stocks. But if you look at the retail market, it's not at the same level as we've seen in the kind of retail hype in 2017, because if you look at, for example, the Google searches for Bitcoin, they're not at the same level yet. But we are seeing more and more retail investors buying into Bitcoin now. They do it with the Mode app in the UK. For example, in December, our mobile app reached the #2 in the UK App Store for finance, and it's an app with Bitcoin in the name, ranked above all high street banks and challenger banks. So you really saw it over the holidays. Then also we had record numbers for onboarded users and traded volumes. And here you see that modern investors, they really enjoy Bitcoin and the innovation in the ecosystem. They think it's an exciting and fresh change from the legacy financial markets and products. They can trade actually Bitcoin 24/7 in their holidays without any limitations. So with Mode, for example, you can sign up on a Saturday night, you can verify your account in less than 3 minutes, and you can connect your bank account via open banking. You top up your wallet without leaving the app, and you can buy Bitcoin right away. So this is just a level of convenience and user experience in the crypto ecosystem where new users, they enjoy it if they compare it to traditional banking hours and fees. And we see investors of all demographics actually getting exposure to Bitcoin at the moment.
Yeah, this is all very well, of course, but I do have to try and get the opposite side to this, because I think it's important to highlight the fact that at the moment, if I was to buy Bitcoin, what do I use it for? Gold, you can wear it. There is an industrial use for it. There are other uses for gold, and you actually physically take something in. With Bitcoin, you don't have to actually take anything physically in, and it doesn't really yet have a universal use. You can't go out and buy a car with it at the moment, not to my knowledge anyway. So what's the point of having Bitcoin? Okay, you're riding a wave of interest at the moment, but what do you say to people that say, why?
It's a very interesting question you ask, and I think this is mainly one of the kind of narratives that really played out well in the last year, because savers all around the world are just looking for stores of value. You don't need a currency, like you have currencies already to pay for things, to pay for coffees, but what you need is a currency that doesn't inflate, where the supply is capped. And this is historically very difficult to prove if it's centrally managed. And in Bitcoin, it's just a digital representation of a capped supply. So gold has always historically been used for its limited supply and its scarcity. And this is now just a digital representation of it.
Okay, let me move on to talk a little bit more about some of the way the company is structured, and talk to Rita if I can. I want to talk a little bit about Mode's future plans, Rita, if we can. I know you're aiming to expand your offering by building your own payments rail. You've got this open banking thing. As Chief Operating Officer, what is it that you're addressing at the moment? What's the most critical issue that you think's worth approaching?
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. So I think we are trying to build a connected ecosystem to solve the current fragmented payment and loyalty, and basically how merchants engage with customers. We do see lots of a pain point in the payment industry. Actually, we think in the payment industry is actually a quite opaque industry. So we're actually working on a immediate launch of extra payment and loyalty functions into our wallet, which will complete our transition from a investment/Bitcoin wallet to a wallet our users can use on a day-to-day basis to pay with both fiat and crypto, and get offers also with both fiat and crypto, and manage their fiat and crypto assets all in one place. So on the fiat front, we're bringing account-to-account payment powered by open banking technology to merchants, which will be a much cheaper and smarter alternative to card payments, because it cuts out all the middlemen in the lengthy payment value chain, that the opaque industry value chain. And we're also revolutionizing how our retailers and merchants can engage with their customers by harnessing the power of data through open banking and our platform. So you will soon see a brand new face of our app with very easy to use payment offer and investment functions. So on payments specifically, user will be able to use our wallet both for digital and in-store payments this year with very simple scan of a QR code and biometric authentication through our Mode app.
This is a very interesting point about payments, isn't it? The fact that we're hearing a lot of companies now adopting their own payment system. Do you think this is the way forward? You've got your own system you're developing. I mean, we've had before, as consumers, we probably all at some point have used or are using PayPal, for example, which is a good universally accepted payment system. Do you think the model is now that every company like yourselves has to have its own payment system? And if you have your own payment system, are you going to encourage others to contract with you so they can use it? In other words, they can pay you for the services you're going to provide.
Yeah, I think, card payment has been the dominant payment methods, right, around the world. But actually, around the world in different markets, there are lots of so-called alternative payment methods, which are not card payment, because there always has a new demand and from the merchants, from the consumers to pay more easily or create a more, smart way to connect the merchants and consumers. So we are building this new payment method based on open banking, which we think is the most exciting technology that's happening in our industry in the past decades. So open banking is a key element of PSD2, Payment Service Directive 2, which was passed by the European Union a few years ago. So open banking essentially mandates all financial institutions to open up their data or their system for authorized the third party to access the funds of the users with users' consent, of course, and also to access their data. So this is to actually the regulator passed this policy in the effort, I think, to drive innovation in the industry, to bring more, alternative to the dominant card payment, which has been around for decades. So with open banking, we're able to facilitate our customers to pay directly from their bank account to the merchant's bank account. So essentially cut out all the intermediaries, which was traditionally in the payment value chain: acquirers, issuers, card schemes, processors. And with open banking, account-to-account payment basically changed it to a merchant user direct, two-step process. So we think this is definitely a very exciting technology we are one of the first movers to bring the benefit to.
This is interesting. What are you targeting here? Are you targeting consumers? You targeting business to business? But the other thing is why should we look at this as an option? Is it cheaper? Is it faster? Is it quicker? Do you get more money out of it? What's the reason for following this strategy?
It's very, very, very good question. So our wallet will be built purely on open banking account-to-account payments. So for merchants, the value proposition is very clear. It's much cheaper than card because it cuts out all the middleman. So it's basically the cost is basically faster payment cost. So for merchants, it will be a much cheaper alternative for compared to other payment methods. And on the consumer side, you're right. There needs to be another value proposition on top of payment. Otherwise, even though it's cheaper than card for merchants, why do consumers want to use it, right? That's why we have for us, the loyalty function or the loyalty proposition in our total solution is very important. So for users, with the savings merchants have from, like with open banking, merchants will be able to offer users more cashback or discounts or offers which is what to drive more, business and transactions to merchants, which is ultimately what the merchants care about, right? Payment for them is utility, but for merchants, what they care about is having more customers and more business. And with our wallet, we will be able to do that because we'll cut down on payment costs for merchants and help them target customers in the right way so that they can have more customers. So that's why this is a exciting solution for our merchants and retailers.
Yeah, this is what fintech's all about, isn't it? It's actually breaking new ground and thinking of new ways of doing things. Janis, I just want to pick up with you on that point about wallets, because I think this is interesting as well. 2 years ago, none of us had really heard of the word wallet in connection with online banking or anything. But this is something I think that's really cropped up, am I right in saying, with the rise of digital currencies and cryptos, bitcoins and so forth. Just going back to what you were saying about Bitcoin and engaging with what Rita was talking about with this wallet idea, are you saying then that if I get my Mode app, I go online, I buy Bitcoin, I put it into my wallet, I can then transact with these people that you say that open banking is all the sort of easier, the easier way to do things? Are you saying I can use Bitcoin to transact with them to buy things through this online system?
It's one of the currencies you can use. Yes, you can use Bitcoin, you can use your pound sterling, euros, and we will aim to provide all of these currencies. You can securely store them, you can transact with them, you can send them to your friends or other contacts that have Mode. So this is what we aim to facilitate. And this is really, that shows the nature of a wallet to enable digital currencies, really.
Yeah. Jonathan, I want to come back to you if you can and take a look once again at the big picture. Before I ask about what's happening in 2021, I know that Rita touched on this. I just really wanted to get your view on how this changes banking. I mean, someone of my age, I've been through them all. A paper, full of paper documentation. I go online. I then do all my transactions online. I now have a bank that doesn't provide me with any paper at all, which is great. How do you see Mode fitting into the commercial banking scene and the retail banking scene that we still engage with?
Well, first of all, I hope you've downloaded our Mode app, Jeremy, because it's interesting for me to hear from people who are not as into the detail of the new applications. So I'll give an example of somebody which really made me feel great about what we've done, because we wanted to make our application very easy to use. So my mother called me up recently and said, Jonathan, I've bought some Bitcoin on your app. I did it on my own. And for me, that was the first sign that people of an age who don't particularly understand what banking is in terms of online banking and what's possible found it very easy to use our application. So I hope you give it a try, Jeremy. Just going back on what the guys have said, we're trying to create what everyone's trying to create now is a very simple, easy to use products and applications and functionality. And the way that banking is going, I'm involved in a bank too. The way that banking is going is that people don't want to go to branches anymore. People don't want paper anymore. They want to be able to click very simply onto their apps and in very short space of time get to something very easy that they understand which doesn't need any sort of third-party assistance to help them with. So banking is changing for good. The Mode app is not a bank. We're not a bank. We are regulated by the FCA. I'm not sure that the way banks are licensed these days will necessarily be the future, because I think you can just work with many different partners to create the same thing under an umbrella of regulation, which maybe one person has and other people work off. Because regulation comes with a heavy burden of capital and governance and things related to that. So I think the future of what we're trying to do is all simplicity, easy to use, things that people understand, which are cheaper, faster, and more secure. And with technology today, we have been enabled to do that at Mode at a cost far less than I've ever seen in the 25 years I've been working in financial services. The barriers to entry are much lower now. Good technology is much easier to deploy, and working with partners is much easier to do because of things like open banking. So the future is simplicity, ease of use, and different functionality all in one place.
Just one final question on the company. And since your listing since October last year, clearly you want to find a way to get past the idea that your share price just reflects the direction of Bitcoin, which at the moment it seems to be quite closely aligned. You certainly benefited from the rise in Bitcoin. What are you doing to ensure that you try and steer the business into a broader field for investors rather than just seeing it as a proxy for Bitcoin?
That's quite difficult to do, Jeremy, as I'm sure you appreciate, because once somebody associates you to something, it's very difficult to then move away from it. But we have a number of announcements coming up in the near future which show the sort of the broadness of our offering. You would have seen the price. We floated at 50p in October. I think we hit 75p during the sort of heavy rise of Bitcoin in early January, and we're back now to around the listing price or just below. I think it just comes down to more sort of education to what we're doing. We're a financial ecosystem. We're not just a Bitcoin business, but because of the excitement and the hype around it, we've been associated to that, which is good and bad, as you say. But we are, as I said to you in October, we are one of the only listed companies with a consumer Bitcoin offering at its core, and one of the first businesses who have adopted the open banking protocols to create a business. When we educate people and they realize the broadness of what we're doing and the people we have. So Rita on this call was 10 years with Alipay and led all of their European expansion. Janis is one of the leading sort of speakers on digital assets. We have a great team. Once people understand that and we do more things like this, Jeremy, it won't take long for people to understand the relevance of this company and what's possible.
Yeah, well, look, it'd be great to talk to you again a little bit later on this year, because I know that there's still an awful lot for you to do and to prove to investors, and we'll certainly be looking at your journey on that. But look, thank you so much indeed for joining us, Jonathan. Jonathan Rowland is Executive Chairman of Mode Global, and Rita Liu, they're joining us on the line as well, she's Chief Operating Officer, and Janis Legler, who joined us as Chief Product Officer at Mode.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you.
For more videos from us here at IGTV, join us on Twitter at IGTV and subscribe to our YouTube channel.